In this episode of BEA Conversations, we speak to Özden of MEP in Turkey. And today's conversation surrounds women supporting women, particularly about next generation's women in leadership. So Eda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I would like to first acknowledge that obviously when we wanted to use this hashtag, the hashtag has started in Turkey, and we want to acknowledge the horrendous femicide rate and also acknowledge the importance of Turkey conventions. And I just want to see from your perspective in Turkey, is everything going okay?
Absolutely. I mean, Turkey's, in terms of legality, in terms of constitutionally, it's a women-supporting country. So, and I mean, so it's more the traditions and the perceptions that we deal with, and sometimes sort of disregarding some realities that are going on. And Istanbul Convention, which Turkey was the first signatory to, against women, against domestic violence, against violence against women, is so important. And now it's being discussed in some countries in Europe as well as Turkey. Does it support traditional family values and things like that? And those two things, like, supporting, being against domestic violence and supporting family values, that should never be, against each other. I mean, it's a part of supporting women in general. So it's a very difficult one, and yes, Turkey is a very young and social media active country. So the hashtag did start in Turkey, and we were very proud of it. We're proud how globally it went, and it shows the power of social media, especially in this day and age when we can't get together and protest on the streets as much.
Yeah, it is so, I do agree with you, it's so important, and that is why we're having this conversation today, isn't it? About we need to continue to educate and empower future leadership, particularly in women,
and push for change.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that when I got to know you as part of our site community, you have always been a strong champion of young leaders, and tell us a little bit about that journey and what are some of the stress points you feel young professional women go through.
Yes, I did start my journey very young, actually, because as you know, I work in a family company, and they've been supporters of site for many decades with the young leaders. So I was very actually lucky to have that community of support and people I could talk to throughout my journey. And I would sometimes even face problems that I didn't even realize I was facing. And when you look back on hindsight, it's always easier to recognize issues that you go through. And I mean, everybody, especially something like ageism or women discrimination against women, I mean, it is valid everywhere in the country and across all verticals, across all industries. But I can only, answer from my personal point of view with our industry. And it was always a bit of a difficulty, especially being in sales, which involves so much travel, so much social activities, often alcohol infused even. And it was always a challenge for me personally, trying to balance that and enjoying my life and career, being a young person, but also having that professional goal. I think with any industry in the world, it's already very demotivating when your career is going really well in a great trajectory, but then you know that you're going to have to hit a glass ceiling when you're starting to have your family, when you're gonna have to cut back on work. I mean, it's just the reality of life. And until sort of laws and regulations change, it is what it is. So that's already very demotivating. And then you deal with a lot of traditions and perceptions. Something that I faced quite a bit was that fear of being misunderstood. Because again, when you're in sales and marketing, when you're traveling around the world, attending conferences, events, it was social aspect of it, building relationships, often happen in the evenings, at night, with the nightcaps, with the after parties. And it was such a challenge for me to have that fun, establish that relationship, but not deal with it. And I often had to compete with male counterparts who were able to go out until wee hours of the night and have their parties and not have that fear of being misunderstood or getting themselves in difficult situations. So I think as a young professional doing sales in our industry around the world, it was always a big challenge for me to keep that professional relationship, but not miss out on bonding opportunities. And finally, I mean, obviously the travel it requires, it always, especially like I have to call my husband fair on this. He never gave me that trouble, but I have so many friends who had difficulty getting into serious relationships or married, who had to cut back on travel because of the roles expected of them at home, by their families or by their husbands or partners' families. And that's always such a challenge as well. Like, I love this job, I want to do this job, but so I think those have been the stress points that I've went through from my personal experience and people around me.
And now that you are, obviously in leadership roles, so how would you feel? What kind of support will we give the next generation of women?
I think that first of all, people, and this even goes out to my company. I think when people say discrimination, it often people think malice. Sometimes there is no malice. It's just a point of, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. So when I discuss with my bosses, listen, I'm missing out on opportunities of sales, with my counterparts who are male. Oh, I never thought about it that way. So it's just having those open conversations and being honest with yourself and not putting yourself in uncomfortable positions because you have to, because you feel like you have to perform. So I think just identifying things to yourself and to your partners, what's expected of me? What are the means expected of me? What are the activities? Am I comfortable with it all? And I think most importantly, am I able to raise a flag if I'm uncomfortable with something? Am I able to be honest with myself and my boss, my superiors, when I'm uncomfortable, and can I change something? So I think, yes, you have to compromise. Yes, you have to negotiate, grow, evolve. But there are red lines that we shouldn't feel like we have to cross. Like, it's not going to make you a worse employee. It's not going to make you less hireable. It is what it is. So having those dialogues, I think, is key.
Can I ask, how can we build a safe environment for women who feel that they can raise these concerns and have this sort of conversation without feeling that they're going to be embarrassed?
I mean, unfortunately, some of it is going to have to come from within. We need to empower women to not make the excuses, be honest with their feelings, not be so shy of showing emotions at the workplace. I mean, these are general for all women. But then some of it is going to have to come from superiors or HR professionals or colleagues or communities which address these kinds of issues. I've never been to a conference where there was like a trust circle where people could discuss things like this. Or I've never, for example, my superiors never encountered an education session where they learned how they could discuss these kinds of topics. And of course, that whole line of, anonymously being able to reach out to HR if something happens, that technical ability to anonymously address your issues, that's always very important. So it's, companies need to evolve and change just like humans do, especially in this day and age. And especially if you want more women to rise up the ranks, we have to open those doors. So I think those are the ways, but we need to women need to I feel like you grow in adversity, and women always like to sort of fight things on their own, fight their own battles. Yes, absolutely important. You shouldn't wait for people to stand up for you. You fight your own fight. But at the same time, you have to have that support. If the door is not open, you can't just knock it down by yourself. I mean, some women do, and there are idols. But in everyday life, it just doesn't work that way, does it? I don't know.
Yeah, very, very valid comments. One last question. So if you know Edda 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, what is the one advice that you would have for Edda at that age when it comes to being a stronger and a successful professional woman?
I was also sharing this with you personally. I was able to, in hindsight, recognize and acknowledge that a lot of situations I were in was almost amounted to some sort of bullying. And I always, in those situations, all I did was, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? And that's important. I mean, absolutely. But even if you make a mistake at work, that should not result in personal attack or you being felt personally uncomfortable, being yelled at in the middle of the office space. Whatever mistake you make professionally, the treatment needs to be decent. And so just recognizing that difference. Yes, you might have been in the wrong 100% professionally, but the treatment you get has to come from a place of respect.
I do agree, because I really dislike bullying at workplace. So how can we best stamp it out, especially when it comes to women being bullied?
I mean, I think, as I said, just being honest with yourself and not making excuses for people constantly, and not waiting for others to stand up for you. I've been in situations in a boardroom, for example, even last year, where I felt that way, and I just looked around the table waiting for somebody to raise an eyebrow, and sometimes nobody does. And I don't know, whatever makes you feel comfortable raising it at that moment or later in private, whatever makes you feel that way. But we have to find a way to call things out, because again, often it doesn't come from a bad place. Often it's not out of malice. Often it's just the way that person behaves, just without thinking. And most of the time when you raise that flag, they're like, I'm so sorry, I never realized that. I never would have recognized that. Yeah. Sometimes it is genuine malice, but often it's just people giving people that feedback, that constructive criticism, and a lot changes through that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think before it gets all emotional and too much, is to start labeling bad behavior and say, listen, I'm uncomfortable with this. It's okay, don't do it again, but I just want to let you know this is how I feel. I think that's a good way to start conversation and improving that relationship.
I think so, yeah. This is how this made me feel. I know, for example, again, I know I was wrong in managing this piece of business, whatever, but that doesn't amount to this kind of yelling, this kind of treatment, this kind of conversation, especially in the middle of other people. Just calling that out. And again, the method might change for everybody. Some people might prefer anonymous emails to HR. Some people might prefer just calling it out in the middle of the board table. Whatever it is, just labeling it is, and often it does bring out a change that is often even surprising to me. So I feel bad about all the times that I didn't label it out, and I should have. And that's, I think, the best piece of advice I would have given myself, the 10 year younger Edda.
That's right. And then now we know we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. We all learn with time, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I know that, we really appreciate the time that you're able to spend with us, because we know that you have just become a mom, and we hope that you're enjoying motherhood. You look like you are all loving it, and you're looking so radiant. So once again, congratulations on your mother. And
thank you.
And on behalf of our community, we'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for raising a spotlight on these issues around the world. It's such an important time to call out, especially when people are feeling so down with everything that's going on. It's great to be involved in a positive project.
Thank you. Thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.